Hey everyone, I wanted to make a video about Brics. I know I used to make these videos all the time, talking about politics and economics and all this stuff. But the world, it gets crazier and crazier by the day and more polarized. So I try not to, talk about sensitive subjects for various reasons. But I figured I'd talk about Brics because, not to sound hipsterish, I was studying Brics before it was cool and before everybody started talking about it. I graduated high school 2007 and I went to Texas A&M University after that, and I wanted to work on Wall Street. And why I chose sociology instead of finance or economics or business or something that would have made sense, I don't know. But I studied sociology, and my sophomore year, I was invited to participate in a paid research project under a professor who specialized in economic development. And what we were studying at the time was the rise and fall of economies. What made certain economies successful, what made them unsuccessful. And I found a data set going all the way back to like 1850. So we're talking like industrial revolution, and we were looking at all sorts of variables: education, natural resources, like anything that could explain a boom in economic activity, and then of course what would cause the collapse. Like I said, I wanted to work on Wall Street. So as I was participating in this research project, like I was also reading stuff coming out of the firms that I wanted to work for, like Goldman Sachs. And Goldman Sachs at the time had an economist who coined the term brick. And at that time, like, it wasn't what it is today. Back then, it was just an economist who said, yeah, we've got these 4 countries: Brazil, Russia, India, China, right? And they all had certain characteristics that would make them potentially good countries to invest in because they could one day be economic superpowers. And interestingly enough, I graduated A&M in 2011. And before I graduated, BRIC had their first summit. And that summit is when the definition changed from just these countries that might be good investment targets for foreign investment and private investment and everything else. And it was more about geopolitics. It was more about a different type of world order. And the impetus for this, I believe, wasn't necessarily from the experience of the BRIC nations, but more so from nations like Bolivia, where you had the rise of Evo Morales, who was a socialist. He wanted to nationalize Bolivia's rich resources, right? But you also had a president in Bolivia named Jose Quiroga. He went to A&M, got educated in the West, very similar to me, and he wanted to work with the West. He just couldn't. He's even on record saying, like, yeah, like, we have a lot to offer in my country in terms of trade, but this is just not a fair level playing field. And so that is what I think got this ball rolling into this new idea of a multipolar world. And it was something that's also been discussed in books like The Decline of American Exceptionalism, where they would talk about, like, yeah, like, America is number one. However, you have other countries that are developing and they're becoming superpowers in their own right, through the means and resources that they have. So it was perfectly understandable that we would get to this point in the future where countries can make their own economic alliances and trade deals outside of the US dollar. And what really accelerated this, and I believe this is why Russia has capitalized on this movement, was Russia's brutal invasion of Ukraine. Upset everybody in the world, sanctions levied against Russia, and they were basically banned from trading in the US dollar and accessing international payment systems, right? And so that's why the focus of BRIC is creating an alliance outside the influence of the West and the rules-based order. Of course, their perspective is, yeah, rules-based order, like America makes the rules, we give the orders, right? They want new payment methods. They want new international settlement systems similar to SWIFT. You look at technologies like blockchain and these cryptocurrencies and smart contracts, and arguably they're in a very interesting position to do something that would be influential in the course of human history.
Кажется, должны понимать, что чем дольше мы будем жить и работать по чужим правилам и на чужих платформах, тем дольше продлится этот переход к новой и более справедливой экономической и финансовой системе. И может это сопровождаться большими потрясениями, в том числе и те, которые мы наблюдаем, в частности, на Ближнем Востоке.
And looking back, when I visited Russia in high school, I became very interested in that country. And I would spend all sorts of time studying Vladimir Putin. And I even thought about working for the CIA because they recruit out of Texas A&M, and I wanted to like get inside the head of Putin. What is he thinking? What's his next move? And even to this day, like, I think I'm pretty good at that because I still watch what he's doing because, you know, I would have never thought that Brics would emerge the way it did compared to when I first was studying this in college so long ago. And a lot of people think that Vladimir Putin is this real genius, but I would say that this idea of Brics and a pivot towards Eurasia, where Russia would align more with China and India, a lot of that is from not Putin, but his mentor. And this man, this is all off the top of my head. I'll edit it and I'll put this stuff in there. But this man who was influential in advising Putin, he used to be part of the Trilateral Commission, the Council on Foreign Relations. He was there with Kissinger. And early on in these organizations, you know, think of like the World Economic Forum, he was there. And he quickly saw that Russia would always be a beggar guest in the international rules-based order. He knew that Russia would never have a real seat at the table. And you can even see Vladimir Putin, you know, talking about this same mentality.
Сомнения возникают. Так ли наши партнеры искренние? Мне кажется, что наши партнеры не хотят союзников. Они хотят вассалов. Они хотят управлять.
Разве это не факт, что мы в 90-е годы полностью раскрылись и ожидали, что и к нам будут также относиться?
Нет, с нами никто по существу не хотел разговаривать. Нас никто не слушал. Послушайте сейчас.
Если кем-то принято решение уничтожить Россию, тогда у нас возникает законное право.
And so what I think the essence of Brics is, in terms of the average American, what does it mean for us? I would say that you might see it painted as a boogeyman in the media, but in reality, all they're doing is creating a middle class outside of the US dollar and Western payment and settlement systems, while arguably America is destroying its middle class. And we seem to be in a time of crisis where how do we make sure that American workers will stay with companies? What do we have to manufacture onshore? How can we become a leader in a service-based economy and keep that leadership in the world? Because the reality is that, you know, the world is growing, the world is changing, countries are creating their own systems outside of American influence, and we have to come to terms with that. So that's all I would say about Brics. And if you like this content and this stuff that I can talk about, message me, we'll talk about it, and I'll share some more resources, but I hope you enjoyed this.